Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Friday in the Riv, and we've got a ton of stuff to talk
It's
about today.
Groundhog Day.
That's right. Punxsutawney Phil. Uh,
Did
there.
not see his shadow, so there will be spring early this year.
Well, Punxsutawney Paul didn't see his shadow either, and there will be early taxes and fees coming in. So that's it. Punxsutawney Paul, the pathological prevaricator Paul.
There you go.
All those fees will be coming back with a vengeance because, as our governor does, they're going to all slide him in the background now. And well, before we get into this, because we got so much stuff to talk about, but we talked about some of these assessment values, and one of our regular contributors, Nelson, is going to be on at some point in time, doing a lot of background work. He's got some staggering numbers that at the best case scenario need a lot of explaining as to why some of these evaluations are there. And I know you've got them. I've got a copy of some of them, and so do you, CJ.
Yep.
Some of these things raise staggering questions, and at worst case scenario, there could be some illegal kind of shenanigans about maybe a little bit of favoritism, like we see on all levels of government here. You know, like if you're a Democrat and you commit a crime or an illegal, you can go free and peg fingers at the United States. But if you're on the wrong party, you get like 4 or 5 years in jail for wandering around with in a costume,
Right.
and basically causing nothing. So it's but this is the whole thing about it. And you know, I saw this morning Gavin Newsom rambling on again about, because he was in a Target store to show how out of touch these people are, like Punxsutawney Paul, and he was talking about he was in a Target, I guess, and he was checking out, buying like a paltry $380 worth of stuff. In California, that's nothing. That comes out. I did a quick figure. That's $19,700 just on that little minor excursion. But then he saw people, you know, he saw a shoplifter walking out, drop something, and he picked it up and he walked out of the store. And the teller said, well, you know, they don't pay, and they just take it. And he said, why? He said, oh, because the governor, you know, and of course he's the governor, and he took offense to that. Number one, she didn't recognize him, and secondly, he took offense, and so he was on TV to show you how out of touch. This was his rationale. The governor. Why did I do that? He said, do you realize that California has the 10th strictest policy on shoplifting? We require, it's only $950 that you can steal without being charged with a felony. And imagine the other 40 states. You wonder why crime is running rampant in this country. These clueless imbeciles, rich imbeciles that don't care about the regular people. This is the way their brain functions. $950 worth of stolen goods. You're not going to get charged with a felony. You're not going to go to jail. You won't even get prosecuted, most likely. Just like the illegals, kicking police officers in the head on video. They go to court, Bragg releases them with no bail, and on the way out, they're flipping everybody to birds. Like, aha, aha. So you wonder why you got to get to the polls? You wonder why you got to vote these morons out, like our governor, who is now cutting benefits to handicapped people while she's spending billions of dollars on illegals and letting them live in Logan Airport. And she's taking heat for that, as is the Boston mayor now. People are getting fed up to here. And I think one person in Boston was interviewed, and she said, Well, you notice they're putting them over here in the poorer communities. They're not going to Newton. They're not going to Brookline. They're not going to Martha's Vineyard. They're displacing our children and our people and cutting benefits to communities that need the help. And you wonder why people are pissed off? Well, there you go. And with that, CG, I'll turn it back to you, because then I can start later on their other clueless endeavor, electric buses.
Oh yeah, the electric buses.
Yeah.
Just what we want to talk about. Something that won't run in the winter when we need it. Can you see all the kids waiting on the bus stops for those electric buses when it's 32 degrees outside and the bus doesn't show up because it's stuck down the road with no juice? It'll be interesting to see. And how does AAA handle that? Do they run around with a big fast charger or something? I mean, I don't know. It's got to be interesting to see. Well,
They wave the white flag. There's
that's
nothing we
it.
can do.
That's right. That's right. Well, to get on to the story of the day yesterday, former Fall River police officer Nicholas Hoar was found guilty in connection with the alleged assault on a man in police custody. That's Mr. Harvey. Now, this time, I have the decision from the court, and I will read it to you. United States of America versus Nicholas Hoar, defendant. Criminal action number 22-CR-10324-ADB. Verdict form. Count 1. Do you, the jury, find the defendant not guilty or guilty of depriving Mr. Harvey of a right under the color of law by striking him on the forehead with a baton as charged in count 1 of the indictment? Guilty. Count 2. Do you, the jury, find the defendant not guilty or guilty of making a false report by failing to include the baton strike to the forehead of Mr. Harvey in a supplemental narrative report as charged in count 2 of the indictment? Guilty. Count 3. Do you, the jury, find the defendant not guilty or guilty of making a false report by failing to include the baton strike to the forehead of Mr. Harvey in a use of defensive tactics report as charged in count 3 of the indictment? Guilty. All 3 counts guilty. I'm not going by somebody else's sources. I will say that technically, the charge of deprivation of rights under the color of law has a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison, 3 years supervised release, and a fine up to $250,000. The charge of false reports provides for a sentence of up to 20 years in prison, up to 3 years of supervised release, and a fine of up to $250,000. Now, we're not expecting him to get the max on all of these. Okay? Sentencing is governed by the U.S. sentencing guidelines and statutes. So we'll see what happens. He is going to court in April. Let me get the exact date. I have it here. On April 24th, 2024 at 11 a.m. Courtroom 17. In-person appearance only before Judge Allison D. Burroughs. So it's going to be interesting to see. The decision was entered on 2/1/2024. So this is it.
Well,
Will this change the face of Fall River Police Department? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I assume that there'll be, normally they appeal these decisions, obviously.
Right.
And, but the appeal, I'm not Raymond Reddington or F. Lee Bailey or something, but I don't believe that the process is held up by an appeal. The appeal goes forward, but the charges at that level are going to be in the sentencing. So it will be interesting to see what happens, and obviously with the due process. But as you said, these kind of things only exacerbate a lot of these lawsuits that have been filed, and
Correct.
even some of the pending cases
Right.
with Fall River, and this is why they didn't want to discuss them in open, in an open forum, because it's not only police cases. We have cases in the school department of sexual harassment, age discrimination, the American Disabilities Act. We've got, the problem is we have lawsuits up the wazoo facing the city, and that's why they want to do it in executive session, because they don't want people to know. They don't want to know what a mess they've got us in by not having a progressive discipline policy. Ever. Coogan's going into his 5th year in office. How long ago was Malone? How long have some of these things been going on in all the departments in the city? And every single time there's a problem, especially in the school department, what was the excuse? Oh, there's no policy. We don't have anything. But that's bullshit too, because it doesn't matter. Do you really need a written policy when somebody, grossly violates people's federal rights, constitutional rights? No! But all the con artists and cover-up artists on the school department, Mimi Larrivee and Paul and Tommy Corey and all the rest of the cover-up artists, they just keep sweeping everything under the rug. Like there was an allegation just a few days ago of a parent walking into a school that doors were supposed to be locked and assaulting a student. Now we're looking into that, but there was an allegation that happened. So what do? They do have a policy about locking the doors, but this is all BS. It's like getting back to Newsom and these people. They live in a dream world. They're insulated. They live in guarded community. They don't care about crime in the street. You get near Newsom, he's got the entire California State Police. He'll have everybody, the National Guard and everybody surrounding his house like Lightfoot did in Chicago. Defund the police. Defund the police. And I'm going to spend $1 million on my security and call what's left of the police department to my house if anybody gets near. You think they care about you? That's how clueless they are. He said, oh, I was spending $380. Some people don't spend that a month for food. They don't have that kind of money to spend on food for their family. These people are just, they're just, and they don't care. They don't care. You're just subhuman. You're subhuman species that they have to put up with, to tolerate, like a stray dog. It's like, just don't ignore them. Don't pay attention to them. That's it. Because this is what they do. And what they want you to do, it doesn't matter whether you want to do it or not. They're going to make you do it. If you let them, that's why you got to get them out of office. It's like the buses. We get nice segue into the buses. Biden's still pushing this EV, even though Ford F-150 stopped making electric trucks. Nobody's buying them. Nobody's buying them. They don't care. Nobody wants them. They suck. Fall River, again, the king of clueless, Paulie. We got electric buses. Oh, we got electric buses. We got electric buses. Well, guess what about electric buses? This is an article about electric buses. They're pulling them in all kinds of major cities. Said part of the problem is the manufacturer of buses, Proterra, filed for Chapter 11 in August. The biggest, got 40% of the market. They filed for bankruptcy because none of them run. Philadelphia, let me see, I got this one. Philly, he's got the, in 2020, the Philadelphia Transit reported sector's entire $24 million fleet had been pulled off because of issues, their entire fleet. And that is the third largest fleet of electric buses in the country. They've had nothing but problems with it goes on to say they are significantly less reliable. They're difficult to get parts for. And they had a story here about in LA, had 13 idled battery electric buses out of 22 in its fleet. So because of battery issues and stuff, you can't get the parts. They don't hold a charge in the winter. And this is California where it doesn't get cold. I mean, but these are the morons that are running this country. They don't care about hundreds of thousands of illegals crossing the border, terrorizing cities, kicking police officers in the head, robbing people, running prostitution rings. They're bringing women in on their motor scooters that we gave them and we paid for. All these things are documented. They don't care. Shut up. Green New Deal. The world's going to come to an end. Just shut up and do what we tell you. Buy an electric car. Who buys electric cars? People who got enough money to have a gas-operated car. Because when they really want to go somewhere, they're going to jump in their gas car. They're virtue signaling. The average people in the United States don't have the money to virtue signal. And Gavin Newsom will then go and have dinner tonight at the French Laundry with all his billionaire friends, and they'll sip their wine and eat at the most expensive restaurant in the United States, and they won't even think about the serfs and the peons and the proletariat and all the other names they use to categorize regular people. So electric buses suck. Electric cars suck. And I don't want to hear their environment bullshit either. Because if they cared about the environment, we would immediately invade China and India, the two largest polluters in the world, who have no regulations against fossil fuels. Zero. But they're making electric cars to sell to us because we're idiots. And we keep these morons in office on every level, including this city. Let's see the price tag in a few years for trying to run that electric fleet that they're all waving at. Oh, look how great we got electric buses. Yeah, okay. Well, look around, but you can't. Punxsutawney Phil's going to go right back into his hole. He didn't see a shadow. Taxes are coming. You're footing the bill for this folly. And with that, CJ, I'll turn it.
You know, we spoke about this a while back, and we heard from I heard from one of our viewers where we did on the last show. I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. And this viewer brought up the fact that, yeah, the people of Fall River voted down the train. You told us so. The people of Fall River voted down Durfee. You told us so. The people of Fall River voted this down. And he was being facetious because they didn't vote any of those things down. They voted for them. Now they're kicking themselves in the ass for doing it because they got to pay the bill. Somebody's always got to pay the piper, baby. And when the band comes, the band wants its money. It doesn't want to wait for it. It doesn't want an electric car. It doesn't want an IOU. It doesn't want a loan. It wants its money. You got to pay somewhere, somehow. And that's the way it works. But I will say one thing. You brought up the New York attack of the police officers. Did you know that those, they call them migrants, those immigrants several of them already have criminal records in New York. Already have criminal records, and we release them. No bail. Makes perfect sense. If you're convicted of a felony, if you're convicted of a crime in this country and you're not a citizen, you should immediately be deported. I've seen it in Fall River numerous times where judges have said, if you're not a citizen, a guilty finding in this case could result in you being deported. Could. Not will, could. We need to change that from could to will. Because it's time that people be held accountable. All the way around.
Yeah, but the virtue signalers, CJ, will never hold them accountable. As a matter of fact, in Congress, you had 150 Democrats vote against deporting illegals who were convicted of drunken driving.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're saying it's racist. No, it isn't. Number one, and I know, and then, what's her name? Priestley, the one from Massachusetts, again shows how they're all rich. They can spend $500,000 on their security. They live in a different world. She blamed Walgreens for shutting down in Massachusetts. They're racist. They're shutting down that store. Of course they're shutting down a store. They're robbing everything in the stores. There was nothing on the shelves. They've lost millions of dollars worth of inventory. And if they can't even lock these people up. So she's saying it's the company's fault. Stay open and let them rob everything in your store. Like Newsom. Oh! Well, arrest the shop, but then again, wait a minute, I just passed a law, but it's the 10th best. They have to rob $951 or more before we do anything to them. That's a great law. These people live in they live in an alternate universe. They live in their own world. Congress, they have their own laws. They're exempt from laws. They can rob things, they can invest in the stock market and insider trading. Nothing happens to these people. How can they advocate for you when they have no idea of how you live? Like I said many years ago, we've been on the air a long time. I think one of our first shows in our first year, I talked about, you want to get these morons to get their heads out of their asses? Many years ago I said, when Ted Kennedy was still alive and he was always talking about this program and that program while his kids went to private schools. I think one of them even went to Switzerland to school. And I said, well, you want him to realize the real world? Take all his money away from him. Give him a check that the average Fall Riverite has to live on, and stick his ass on the 3rd floor of a 3-decker with a drug dealer across the hall, 2 hookers on the 2nd floor, right, and a meth cooker on the 1st. And let him live there for a year or 2. Let him live in a place where he's afraid to walk on a street. Let him live in a place where he can't afford everything he wants. Not on a compound. And all these nitwits in Congress stick their ass in a 3-decker. Because once they get up there, they forget where they came from. Just like Ilhan Omar saying that Somalia is ahead of the United States, they want to throw her out of Congress. And she's going, oh, no, the interpreter, bullshit. She's a radical communist, socialist. And she's already forgot where she came from. She paid her husband $1 million for security. They're loaded, like they all are now. She already forgot. She wants to go back to Somalia, go ahead. She probably lived in a house with a dirt floor. But she's forgotten that already. Now Somalia's great. Well, go back. I'll pay for your plane ticket. I'm sick and tired of these people. I'm sick and tired of these rich, out-of-touch people running our government. And it frustrates the hell out of me that I go to the polls every year, and vote against them. While 40,000 people in this city and hundreds of thousands of people throughout the country listen to their lying bullshit for 50 years in a row. Baltimore's been run by Democrats for 100 years. It's a disaster. And as are other cities. They don't do anything. So is it frustrating? Yeah. You know, and unfortunately I'm hooked on the news. And it infuriates me to see what happens in this country. Nobody's paying attention. They should be storming Boston with what Healy's doing in his state now. And you don't want to call them illegals. Oh yeah, Ayanna Pressley said, oh, you can't, no human is an illegal. Well, they are illegally in this country. So you know something, I'll defer to you. If you want to split hairs and say, technically you can't call them illegal, they are illegally in the country. So rather than call them illegals, I'm not going to call them migrants. You know what I'm going to call them? Criminals. Because that's what you call people who violate the law. Criminals. So take your pick, Congresswoman. Which one do you like better, criminals or illegals? Because they're one or the other. They are not migrants. They're not picking beans on 42nd Street or vegetables, as that moron said, the Penguin. We need them here to pick our vegetables and have babies. Oh, I'll tell you, you gotta be one seriously mentally impaired individual to say that in front of a camera in Congress. Talk about condescending, and that's what he thinks of them. We need them to pick our vegetables and to have babies. Well, he really cares a lot about them. That shows how much they care. They just want him here to do exactly what they're doing. Provide cheap labor and destroy this country. So you think I'm pissed? Yeah, I am pissed because I'm sick and tired of turning on my TV and seeing police officers getting kicked in the head, people getting carjacked, people getting attacked, while that rotting bag of oatmeal we have for a president is worried more about Ukraine than he is about our own border and the safety of the people who he was elected to represent. And with that, CJ, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, I mean, Linda said, they're invaders, so it's always good. Louise has been very active on the YouTube feed. She wants to know why we're not talking about the failing of the military. She said that it's not $950, it's $250. No, in California, it's $950. In Massachusetts, it's $1,250 now. It's no longer larceny over $250. It's now larceny over $1,250. That's Massachusetts now. Your state legislature changed the law, just like they did in California. They upped the levels. And I agree, our military is failing. But it's not that they're failing because the structure is failing. They've changed the structure to accommodate people who have not graduated high school, have not gotten a GED, who don't have an education. They've changed the system because the system is faulty. We don't have a mandatory situation where you must serve. Other countries in this world force you to serve 2 years in the military, whether you like it or not. 2 years. Korea, Portugal, France, Spain, 2 years. Even if it's in a desk in a building, it's 2 years. And that's not too much to ask. And because we don't have people willing to volunteer, maybe that's a system we need to go back to. I mean, do you want to bring the draft back? I mean, that's what it sounds like. Because you don't want to come out and help the country. And that's what it is. Helping the country. And the people need to know that. You look at three people who were recently killed by Iranian-based terrorists. And the president still hasn't done anything. I got a problem with that. I got a serious problem.
But let me get back to the military. Number one, the problem with the military now is its leadership. We have a Secretary of Defense that was missing for a while. Nobody even knew he was gone. He gets on there, he reads 2 lines. Now they worry about pronouns on the forms. They have to use the proper pronouns. The military is there to protect our country and to fight and to protect our nation. And these people, it shows the travesty. A few weeks ago, we lost 2 Navy SEALs. And, you know, the SEALs are Special Operations Elite Warriors. Those men are volunteers, as are all the other Special Operations units. And I was in one of them. I know that. I had to volunteer to go into that unit. They don't force you into that unit. But we are not going to get people to enlist in the military that doesn't protect them. We have had nearly 200 attacks since October 7th on our troops in the Middle East.
Correct.
And those 3 individuals who were killed weren't even regular military. They weren't, as we called it in the Army, RA, regular Army. They were National Guard, Georgia National Guard. And there's a question now what they were even doing there. Why they were assigned to that hot zone. They were engineers. They were not infantry. They were not combat soldiers. They were engineers. Engineers build things. They extend landing strips. They build bridges. They do things like that. They were not soldiers who were supposed to be in a combat zone just to be there. And there's questions by the people in Congress who were previous military men questioning that right now. Why are they there? I can give you my hypothesis. We can't get people to enlist anymore because this government doesn't protect them. They put them in harm's way, and you got the oatmeal bag twiddling his thumbs now saying, well, we will respond at a time of our choosing. Well, we've got 3 new Gold Star families. And that 0 hasn't even said if he's going to show up when the caskets come here.
He did show up.
Well,
Him and the Secretary of Defense.
All right, well, he did. Yeah, and I hope he didn't look at his wristwatch this time like he did when the 13 freaking caskets came back from Afghanistan. Because he was too bored and he wanted to get out of there. This is why we can't have a military, because these wokies, just like they've done to everything else, we don't care if electric cars don't work. Shut up, we're making money off them, and we want you to have them. We're going to virtue signal you to death by saying you have to save the planet while we're letting China and India destroy the damn environment. They're the 2 biggest polluters on the planet Earth. They're all full of shit. And it's the same thing with the military. Oh, the military. You got 2 zeros in there, Millie and Austin, who couldn't lead a 1-man parade. You put our people in harm's way, and then when they're attacked, you don't even defend them. We're still waiting to determine what we're going to do because they're putting politics above military considerations. When you have generals that don't understand a very simple tenet of society that the Romans gave us, and they are words to live by. And I'm going to give them to you as I'm done today, because this really pisses me off. We have 3 more Gold Star families. If you want peace, prepare for war. And we are unprepared with what we have in our military, in our government. And this man has done something that was inconceivable. He has destroyed the United States and are standing in the world in less than 1 term. So with that, CJ, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, Louisa turned around and said that, we're not prepared. She says China outnumbers us in military 5-1. 5-1. And, this is why we need. And she also made a suggestion that we take the immigrants and let them be in the military, and then they can earn their citizenship. Because they used to do that, if you remember. If you remember back in the Vietnam era, they did that. In Korea, they did that. If you weren't a citizen, you could join the military, and when you got discharged, you got your citizenship.
Yeah, I actually knew a few who were in the military who were not citizens when they were in the military. They served honorably. And, when they came out, they became citizens because they had a commitment to their country. But I'm going to tell you something. Those thugs that were kicking police officers in the head and pegging fingers at the cameras when they came out of court, they're not going in the military.
No, they're not.
What they did was get on a bus and head for California so they won't have to go to trial.
Right.
These people, yeah, and I agree. There probably are some who are willing to serve. But it scares me when I look at military-aged Chinese, Russian illegals coming across the border. Why are they coming here? Why are they coming here? You don't get out of China. You don't get out of China unless they let you out. They'll hunt you down. They'll drag you back over there. And nobody cares except the people who know what's going on. I saw a video of them coming across the border the other day. The majority of those illegals were Chinese and Russian and Kazakhstani, which is Russia. This is what's coming into the country now. We're running out of Mexicans. We got them all here now. Now they're coming from 180 different countries. Yeah, there might be a few that will serve, and I agree with that. I knew when I was in the military, we had non-citizens that would volunteer, swear an oath to this country, serve it honorably, and become citizens. And they make great citizens. I don't have anything against immigrants. All of our parents and grandparents are great men. Somebody in our family at some level came here, even if it was on the Mayflower, they still were not residents here. They came here and made a life. So I don't have anything against the immigrants, but I have a lot against illegal gang members and criminals. If the first thing you do when you come to the United States is to violate its law on immigration, as far as I'm concerned, how can you ever swear an oath to this country and become a citizen? You have forfeited your right, because the first action you ever did in this country is to ignore the sanctity of its borders. And with that, CJ, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I want to thank you, Chip, and I want to thank you all for watching. Remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Monday.